Welcome to Caleb's Basketball Pod. I want to start this episode with a couple just announcements real quick. First off, as you can see, we're coming to you from Thursday this week. And just letting you know that next week, with next week being the NBA trade deadline, if I don't get to the episode on Wednesday, then the episode will be dropped on Thursday, the Mito episode of next week. And it will be a trade deadline special where I will break down and run through every trade that happened, even the small ones. Any trade counts on trade deadline day. And then if I do happen to drop an episode on Wednesday, depending on what's going on, then the Friday episode will be our trade deadline breakdown episode. So stay tuned. One of those will be a trade deadline episode. I'm coming to you Thursday tonight at 6:30. NBA on TNT Inside the NBA will announce the NBA All-Star Reserves tonight. If you watched a few episodes ago, I predicted my NBA All-Star Reserves. So what I'll do on tomorrow's episode, part of it will be I will go through and see if the players I picked made and see how close I was on my predictions, and we'll follow that together. And if you have any predictions after this episode's dropped for All-Star Reserves, let me know before the picks tonight, and we'll see what you got too on that. Comment below. But with that said, let's get to some of our stories that's going on around the league and just news and just around the league, like teams, scores, all of that. Last night was a very interesting night. So a couple nights ago, we saw the Miami Heat beat the Orlando Magic, rallied and beat them. That was right after the suspension of Jimmy Butler, where they suspended him indefinitely for being told he was going to come off a bench for Highsmith, and he walked off the court. Some said through a tantrum, but anyway, he got suspended indefinitely. And as I've been mentioning, that situation's just a bad, sticky situation. Not looking good on either side, in my opinion. I think both kind of not dealing with it the proper way, just in my opinion. I think you have to be more classy even if you're on your way out. And I think if you're Miami, for what he's done for your franchise, you have to be more classy on getting him out. But again, that's just my opinion. Some breakups go really, really bad, and that's what we're seeing right there. But nonetheless, we saw Miami rally and get a much-needed win over the Orlando Magic. Because how it's going, Miami's sitting at that 7th seed. As we know, 7 through 10 is play-in spots in the playoffs. And with us being a little bit over halfway through the season, you don't want to be in that play-in area. Well, coming off of that win, like I said, suspending Jimmy Butler indefinitely, they played in Miami against Cleveland last night. Never really got in it. Kind of down throughout most of the game. Ended up losing by 20 points. These are games that means something at this point if you're Miami. You want to stay away from that play-in my opinion. But you're going through a lot. Just as a team, as a franchise, you're going through a lot with this Jimmy Butler situation, which is why I keep saying, even at this point, wherever you get for him, it's just time to move on and get the distraction away from the team. And I feel this whole situation's been a distraction to Miami, even to Jimmy Butler. We've seen Jimmy Butler's numbers are not good this year. Even if he was playing consistently, he would be in the All-Star Reserve consideration, in my opinion, because his stats are just not there. His numbers and making a difference, it's all just not there, and it seems like that's because he just doesn't want to be there. So I think at the end of the day, we need to get past this for both, get rid of the distraction, see where Miami can go. Miami wants another player that allows them to continue to compete. Do I feel they get a championship level piece? No. Maybe a good enough piece to move on. For rumors of a Jimmy Butler-Julius Randle swap somewhere along that lines for Minnesota. I'm not sure how Jimmy Butler fits in on the Minnesota side. Don't think Julius Randle would be a bad addition For Miami, I think he may help. He'd give a second kind of ISO level scorer to Miami, along with Tyler Herro, and see if we can get more production from Bam Adebayo. Because if you're Miami, that's what you're wanting. You wanted more production from Bam. He's had a subpar season, in my opinion. He's not really an all-star reserve consideration, in my opinion. Tyler Herro is. Bam Adebayo is not. So it's just interesting to see where we go. See where we go from there. See what pans out in the trade deadline. But you have to get rid of him, even if the asking price gets super low around the deadline. You just have to get rid of him and put this distraction behind you if you're Miami, in my opinion. Let's move on to another game that happened last night. Very interesting game. We saw the Golden State Warriors beat the Oklahoma City Thunder. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had 52 in a loss to Golden State. But Golden State's won 2 straight. It was on back-to-backs, and we know Golden State's had struggles on back-to-back games this season. So it was nice to see them pick up 2 straight. Are they going to be consistently winning back-to-backs? I don't think so. And especially when you're beating Oklahoma. But for some reason or another, they've had Oklahoma's number, beating them twice on this season. So maybe it's just for matchups. Maybe it's Steph gets fired up against Oklahoma. I'm not sure, but whatever reason, Golden State's fared well against Oklahoma this season, which is nice. They've struggled against some teams. The Lakers have had Golden State's number, but like I said, they've done well against Oklahoma, so that's good. That's a bright spot for them. Speaking of the trade deadline, I mentioned Golden State because they're another team that's looking to make a move, make a splash. Jimmy Butler's a possibility. But I've been saying this, one trade don't fix that Golden State team. Still don't think that is enough to compete even if you acquire Jimmy Butler. And a lot of that is, as I spoke on before, you're losing younger pieces to get him. I don't really think that's the way, and I don't think you mortgage your future for anyone that's available at this moment. Maybe in the offseason, if a big superstar becomes available, maybe you mortgage the future and see what you can do in the now. But at this point, I don't see anyone on the level to give up what you have future-wise. But that'll be another interesting developing story to keep up with here in the next week. And we had last night, just went through some games, we had New York take care of the Denver Nuggets, handing them their 4th straight loss for the first time this season, the Nuggets that is, in Madison Square Garden. And Jalen Brunson had a huge 35 and 10 game or 15 game, I think. But amazing game from Brunson. Jokic was not what we've been seeing of him, and especially most of the season. I don't know if maybe he was tired, maybe New York just had really good defense on him. There's been history of Karl-Anthony Towns playing stellar defense on Nikola Jokic, even dating back to the playoffs last year. I don't know if that's necessarily a thing or if he's just happening to have bad games against Towns, but one way or another, Towns has been owning that matchup as of late. It's very interesting and neat to say, and especially like I've been saying, Towns is becoming a star in New York. He's went from a all-star caliber player to a superstar caliber player, and he's still showing that night in and night out. The bench unit's been used a little bit more for New York, which I've been saying they need to do. They've gone 9 deep in the last few games, which is really impressive for a Tom Thibodeau team. But nonetheless, like I've been saying, I love what the Knicks are doing. Knicks are a team to watch at the trade deadline. They're looking to improve their bench and maybe get a big, with Mitchell Robinson not really being consistently there and having not played yet this season. They're on the market for a big, maybe Valanciunas, someone like that. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with that. We saw the Clippers pick up a win over the San Antonio Spurs last night. Kawhi Leonard showed out in just 28 minutes of action. I keep saying the Clippers are a team to watch, especially if they get a healthy Kawhi come playoff time. And so far, they're looking pretty good heading towards the playoff area. It's just how healthy will Kawhi be? Will he be off of that minutes restriction? It's questions that you can't answer too soon because you never really know with Kawhi Leonard. But I hope for the best, and if he's there, as I mentioned last episode, Clippers are capable of beating anyone. On the sports side of things, I mentioned, I believe last episode, De'Aaron Fox will be available on the trade market. His preferred destination is the San Antonio Spurs. I have not talked about this yet, so I'm going to go on record saying that would be nice, but it depends. What do you have to give up for Fox? And Fox is not a free agent until 2026. So he's not before this next season. He's after this upcoming season. So also, if you're the Kings, you have time. If you don't see, if San Antonio is not offering something you like and you're trying to be respectful to your current star player, De'Aaron Fox, and you're going to send him where he wants to go and not just send him anywhere because, as I mentioned before, Bradley Beal is the only player with a no-trade clause. You still have to get something for your future in return. Draft picks. I'm not sure how much San Antonio is going to be willing to part with draft picks, especially with not being even in the play-in at this point in the West right now. So how many draft picks do you want to give up? Because it may not make much of an impact this season having De'Aaron Fox, maybe for the future. And if you get him to commit to a big deal after next season and extend him, then hey, that's great, but it's not putting you anywhere at this moment. And if you're giving up draft picks for this upcoming draft, it may not bode too well. So it'll be interesting to see what San Antonio gives. And like I said, if you're the Kings, you have time. If it's not at the trade deadline, you can do it in the offseason. You have before the end of next season to really trade him before he just walks for nothing. So assuming he's not planning a holdout if he's not traded, you don't have to rush anything on the trade of De'Aaron Fox. So don't be surprised if that nothing develops with that at this deadline because, like I said, they have time on that. But do I think Wembanyama and De'Aaron Fox would be a great duo? Yes, I do. I think it'd work. I think Wembanyama being able to shoot and just be a powerhouse like he is and drive and pretty much do everything, I think that opens the floor for De'Aaron Fox more. And I also think it takes a lot of the pressure off of De'Aaron Fox having to do so much like he does in Sacramento. With someone as dominant as Wembanyama, you don't have to do as much. So it will help both of them tremendously to have that second in command, so to speak. Both of them used to be in number one in command. And I think as long as De'Aaron Fox takes the number two role, the Spurs would be rolling and have a really good team and build some younger players and maybe even some vets and free agency around those two. And see how good they could be. And also in this trade for De'Aaron Fox, do you have to give up Chris Paul to make this trade happen? Because if not, having Chris Paul come off the bench and lead the team and be that veteran voice and leader would not be a bad thing for the San Antonio Spurs to keep, especially with a chance of possibly going into the playoffs and wanting to make a deep run in the next 2 or 3 years, having Chris Paul maybe as a player or at that point maybe an assistant coach to help and just tell them how he is and like what they need to do because he's been there before. He's that veteran leader and he could still be that guy even if he's on or off the court at that point. So that's another headline to look at and wait for and see what happens. Also want to mention Boston destroyed the Chicago Bulls last night. I want to mention Minnesota beat the Phoenix Suns. And we have Brooklyn beating Charlotte. Charlotte lost LaMelo for a week, at least, possibly longer. Ankle injury again. And it'll be interesting to see, like I said, there's been a lot of missed games. It'll be interesting to see if LaMelo makes the All-Star reserves. I spoke on that on the All-Star reserve, but again, another injury and missing more time. I'm really leaning towards at this point with all the injuries that maybe he's just not an all-star from lack of playing so much, but we'll see. We'll find out. Someone else I don't think I mentioned much on the All-Star Reserve episode I did was Tyrese Maxey, but that was probably because at the time when I did that episode, the Sixers had like maybe 15, 16 wins at the point. They're starting to build up more wins and they're like a game out of that last play-in spot. So don't look now, but the Sixers are staking their claim to possibly be a part of a postseason. And Tyrese Maxey is making a claim to be an all-star reserve. huge games as of late, and Sixers are on a 4-game win streak, and all of those games have been without Embiid, and a few of them's been, a game or two has been without Paul George. So Maxi's really shouldering the load and just, in my opinion, just playing amazing basketball. So he's staking his claim for an All-Star reserve spot at this moment too. So don't be surprised if Maxi don't get in, and if he does get in, well deserved. But with that said, I will come to you tomorrow and we'll see how these predictions went for the All-Star reserves. We have 7 of them, and see how close I got to being spot on with them. If I got close to being spot on, we'll find that all out on tomorrow's episode. So stay tuned, keep watching. Bigger shows coming. We're getting closer to 100, and past the 100 point and even further out. I'd love to get more guests on. I just have to try to line them up and get time slots for me and them on the right time frame, and that takes some time, but I'm working on it. So stay tuned, and see you tomorrow.